Okay, so while one vote can and a lot of times actually has made a difference, it'd be really hard to argue that there's not a case, though, for that there's strength in numbers. And I think it's definitely true when people work together with other individuals that have the shared ideas and beliefs as each other. And when they work towards that common goal, it's often they're going to find more success more quickly than one person acting alone. And I think we definitely have the social media tools available to us to really affect that change on a larger scale and at a more rapid rate. For example, using Facebook to help campaign for a candidate, sharing posts that they make to their pages, using Twitter to help keep people abreast of changes or planning for activities and changes to locations or times, those sort of things. I'm less familiar with like Instagram and Snapchat, but I know they're also very effective tools in reaching people. Using hashtags that are in common can also be a very effective thing. Oop, my clicker stopped working. Hang on. Escape. Now, what motivates people to want to participate, to become involved, to try to realize more change to happen? It could be a lot of different reasons for different people. It could be habit, like we talked about with our political culture and socialization chapter, how we can use how your parents vote to help predict how you will vote because that's how you're raised. Well, the same thing for just even voting in general. If your parents are voters and continually vote all the time and that's what you learn to do, maybe even going to the polls with them, you're going to be more likely to do that. If your parents are active in volunteering in their church, in their community, as you start to grow and mature, you're also going to be more likely to continue that because that's what you've learned. It's become the habit. It's become the norm. Life experiences can also prompt people into action. And it doesn't have to be, like I'm going to change the world tomorrow type action. But even say a group of swimmers and their parents become upset that the timing system in the pool never seems to work. And so they use that as an opportunity to go before the school board during open forum to share their concerns and try to encourage the board to take action. Okay, those would be, these life experiences that are prompting you to action. It doesn't always have to be on the, save the life kind of scale immediately. Even your attitude towards politics, which can come from your parents, but it can also come through other experiences you've had with politics or government, can affect that as well. Whether you view participation as your sense of civic duty and how to make our country a better place to be, or whether or not you feel that just what you do by yourself could make a difference. And that's what we refer to as being political efficacy. How much that what you do individually can contribute to meaningful success or changes. If I click, am I going to disrupt people? Okay. I can always come back. Sometimes, and here's where anyone in psychology? Excellent. Help me with these brain hormones and how everything works up there. When you do an action, right, and you find pleasure in that action and it makes it more meaningful, doesn't your brain release like these dopamines or some other hormone in your brain that helps to stimulate wanting to repeat that action? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, that can also help to contribute to repeating actions when we talk about volunteering. If you're doing something that is benefiting others and you find that personally rewarding, you're going to be more likely to continue to do those types of activities. that can make a huge difference then as you repeatedly volunteer to help others out at, say, the food pantry, or you continue to work as a bell ringer for the Salvation Army, or you collect toys for tots, or whatever it happens to be. If you feel that satisfaction by helping others, that's a great way to become involved as well. So what about the people then that don't become involved and choose not to participate? Sometimes there are actual legal reasons why people don't become involved. If you are in prison, you are going to find it hard to be able to perhaps participate in a march or a protest movement because you're kind of confined. You may fail to meet the voter registration requirements. Even though we talked about how easy they are in Minnesota, still you might have been someone who moved to a place maybe 15 days before an election and you wouldn't be allowed to vote. Or you might be not a U.S. citizen, even though you live here and you benefit from being in the society and you have your own opinions on things. You have to be a U.S. citizen to be able to vote. So those could be reasons why people choose not to participate. So if we think about, in general terms, who's more likely to participate than who, we can look at several different demographic type factors and make general predictions about who is more likely to vote, who is more likely to volunteer their time, to campaign for others, to donate money, maybe even to run for political office themselves. Generally speaking, a person's socioeconomic status if you have a higher socioeconomic status, meaning you make more money, that you're more well educated, and you have then more opportunities available to you to be able to participate. Generally speaking, the older you are, the more likely you are to be politically involved. And part of that comes from experience. Part of it, though, also comes from, like how we were talking about, I think one time, between the ages of 18 and 25, how often you're going to move in your lifetimes. Didn't we talk about that? Yeah. And so just that being in a transition might mean that you are going to, at least for that period of your life, be less involved than you might be in others. When we think about gender and we think about voting, gender plays no role in voter turnout between men and women. They vote in equal rates and in equal amounts. What does make a difference in terms of gender, though, is people who run for office and people who are elected to office. And men are far still outnumbering the number of women, even though women make up 50% of the population. They're way less than 50% of our representatives and senators. We've yet to have a female president. We do have the greatest number of females on the Supreme Court today. That's 3. And even if you think more locally, it's only been in the last maybe 3-4 years since I've been in the Malacca area, has there been a female that has been on the Malacca City Council. There's one right now. And the only one since the time I've been around here. Anybody know who that is, by the way? Her name's Lori Game. Race and ethnicity. If you factor out socioeconomic status, race and ethnicity really have nothing to do with amounts of participation. So what do I mean by that? Generally speaking, minorities tend to be less well off. They don't get as much education. They don't make as much money. Therefore, that's really the primary reason why they wouldn't vote, not because of their race or ethnicity. Generally speaking, we could say those with the most money wind up having the most time. And because they have the most time, they generally get the most experiences, which then lead them to have greater skills in being able to communicate with others and being able to contact the right people in order to bring about the most change. We can also think of it this way. Generally speaking, again, the older you are, the more education you have, And the more money you make it more likely that you will be politically involved. Whether that's voting or volunteering or running for office or donating money or any of those other ones that we had up there on the list, probably except for rioting. Okay, so conversely then, the younger with a lower education and a lower income are going to be among the most least likely to participate, even though those groups could be the ones that might most benefit from the changes that may take place. And I'm going to give you a moment here just to catch up on that. But as you read that, does that kind of what you would logically assume to be true, does it make sense? Or is it logical?
Yeah.
Okay, I may click, but I can always come back, because I'm afraid the people on camera are going to think that something went wrong. Okay, social movements. We have a strong tradition of social movements when people come together to work for a cause. And I think that says a lot about the type of democratic society that we have, grounded in these ideas of freedom of speech and freedom of the press that people really take seriously, that allow them to be able to assemble, allow them to be able to mobilize as a whole group to try to bring about effective change. And we've seen that time and time again in many different areas. You could look at the abolitionist movements around the time of the Civil War. You could look at women's suffrage movements. You could look at temperance movements that led to prohibition coming into place. You can talk about more recent times with groups like Black Lives Matter, all being these different groups that have, to their own degrees of success and failure, work together towards a common direction for a cause that they really believe in. Okay, and so this is kind of where a little bit of the civil rights movement has kind of come into place here as well, because when we think of these groups that are trying to achieve more equality, whether it be women's suffrage or whether it be the ending of slavery, or whether it be for promotion of more equal protection of the laws today, and how different groups feel that they are treated by police. All are really seeking this equal protection of the laws, and the ways that they have had to achieve that have been through mass movements of large numbers of people. Now, it definitely will help these groups if they have strong leaders that go along with it, kind of like you would find with Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement of African Americans. Movements have also worked to help create better opportunities for people with disabilities, as well as for senior citizens. Social movements really rely upon that collective organization and collective action that are moving towards this common goal. And again, I think we're in this time where access to the internet and access to social media can really help accelerate the pace at which many of these ideas and these changes can really be made known to an even wider audience. And what happens when a large number of people support something? We know from our public opinion. What are politicians more likely to do? Take action on it, right? And we did finish. We're better than the other hour. I rambled less. I can go back. But if you're watching, you can always pause, right?